Welcome back, everyone. We are here with the final game of the 2024 Idaho Closed, and at this point, I'm on 5 out of 5. My opponent here is on 4.5 out of 5, so very, very close to me. My opponent is also the 2018 state champion, so he's a very formidable opponent, and he's also a very attacking player. So going to this game, I'm expecting to see some blood. In addition, I just finished the 6-hour game in round 5, and however, the tournament director did graciously give me an extra hour before the next round started, even though the next round was supposed to start like 30 minutes after, so I got some extra rest, which was very nice. But I was still pretty tired, so going into this game, I thought that I would just make a draw if I could, even though that would lose some rating. But if there's a chance to play, then I would play. So my opponent's a very attacking player, and then he also plays the A3. He also plays the Alpine Sicilian, and this isn't as sharp as some other open lines, but nevertheless, it is nice. It, it is possible to get some imbalanced positions in this line. So we get queen takes d5, d4, g6, bishop g7, and I've gotten this position many times online, so I was pretty happy with how the opening that was played. So bishop e2, a take, and play knight to f6. Now queen goes to a5, and it's important to note here that we don't really want the knight on c6 too early because a d5 might just kick it away. Not in this exact position because of d5 I can actually take the pawn and then take on c3, removing the defender of the queen. But sometimes after d5, white can just get a lot of overwhelming space. Okay, so we get castles and castles. Now we get knight to e5, and this looks like the knight is good in the center, but what it really does is just run into knight to c6. And I didn't play this in the game because I didn't like this weak pawn, but it turns out that it's not even that weak. I can just like move the bishop or something, and then play rook d1, and I have really good development, and white is actually behind the development. And with this isolated d pawn being pretty weak, I can also just make some. I can also just make some threats. These pawns aren't too healthy either, so this is completely fine for black. Instead, I played knight to d5, trying to trade these knights instead of these knights over here. And this is a slight mistake because it allows my opponent to like take and then get a tempo on my queen. The best place to put the bishop is on f3 because it kind of restricts my bishop on c8. And I thought that after bishop to f4, if he played bishop f3, now bishop f4, I would probably play knight to either d7 or c6, probably d7. I'm taking advantage of the fact that this bishop is unprotected, so any discovered attacks do not actually work. And my goal is just to trade enough pieces, and then if my opponent goes crazy, then maybe I can win. And if not, then it just ends in a draw. So we get takes and bishop to c4 instead. I just go back to d8. I'm not really worried about my kind of bad development because I can just move pieces and threaten some trades and get some tempo. Now I get queen to b3, trying to attack f7, but this just allows e6, and it looks like my development is like kind of slowed down, but I can really just make moves. What white could do instead is maybe moves like bishop g5, just continuing to develop the minor pieces, and try to use this files around the isolated d pawn to gain some activity. And this also, what this does is it pins e6. It pins the e pawn, so now queen b3 is a serious threat because I no longer have e6. So I'd probably play like knight c6 here and trade pieces. So we get queen to b3, e6, rook to d1, and now knight to c6, threatening to trade the knight. And if the knight like moves, then I just go knight to a5, and now I have the two bishops, and I'll get the bishop on this diagonal. It'll be very, very nice, especially with this pawn here. Instead, we get a trade, takes, and now let's look at this position. This bishop is kind of locked in. That's the really my only issue. Also, this rook. But if I can get the right trades, then with these pawns here, if I can, especially if I can trade these light squared bishops, it's going to be very, very good because this pawn can never push, and it's going to be a permanent weakness, and I can attack it with my bishop. So my idea is to trade these bishops and pause the video to see if you can find an idea of how to trade the bishops. So not really a specific moves. There could be moves, but what are the idea? What is the main strategy to trade these light squared bishops? So if you found this bishop going to a6, then that is the best way to trade the bishops. And if you find queen b6, then congratulations, you also found the best move. because this not only threatens to trade the queens, but it also threatens bishop a6 after. So you might be wondering, why didn't I play queen b6? I played queen a5 instead. But after queen b6, I thought that I thought something. I think I thought something was, for some reason I didn't play queen b6. It was my original plan, but maybe I didn't like that. I knew that trading is good for me, but maybe I saw that like, I don't know, queen somewhere, and then like the bishop can drop back. The queen b6 would have been okay as well. Queen to a5 is also queen to a5 is also okay, and also a5 to protect with the rook, and then the rook also gets active, so that's also a nice idea. So I play queen to a5, we get bishop to d6, attacking the rook, trying to take advantage of these dark squared holes on the queen side here. Rook to d8, attacking the bishop, and now queen to g3. And queen to g3 protects the bishop, but now the queen's also tied down to the bishop. And although there was a threat on c7, which I almost completely missed, I can just defend that with rook to d7. And now this bishop can't really move because of this pawn also. This pawn is starting to become kind of a weakness. So now my opponent plays rook d3, which is a huge mistake. Instead, bishop c5, which is what I was expecting, would stay on the pawn, and it would also kind of create a fence around my queen, so my queen wouldn't be very active. And after bishop a6, my opponent has moves like b4 and bishop to b3 to keep the bishop, and maybe moves like a4. White just has a lot of space on the queen side. It looks very, very pleasant. Instead, we get rook to d3, and on first glance, this looks like a very nice move because it prevents bishop a6 because of rook to a3. And also, if I can't play bishop a6, then this rook might be able to lift at some point, and if White can like to maybe trade these light squared bishops, there could be mating ideas on the h file. So this looks like a nice rook lift. However, it is a huge mistake because I can play bishop a6 anyway. And once I saw this and I played bishop, the reason I can play bishop a6 is because after rook to a3, I can actually move the queen to d8 and attack this bishop a second time, so that after takes and takes, I've eliminated this bishop, and I've also eliminated my bad bishop. So now I'm just going to take this pawn next. 3 attackers, no defenders. And after I do that, I can solidify my bishop with c5, and I have a really, really strong wooden shield. So that would be very, very good for me. And my opponent can't go for that. And once I played bishop a6, this was when I could feel that the position was shifting towards my favor. And at this point, I was confident that I was not going to lose this game. And the only thing left to do is see if I can win. If I can win, then I'll play for the win. If I can't, just take the draw and then get 5.5 out of 6 and take first place. So my opponent takes, I take back, bishop to c5. There's still this weak pawn here, and that's just going to be my main target. I play e5, taking advantage of this pin. There's a nice line here with, or yeah, rook a3, queen to e2. There was a nice line where I could actually sacrifice my queen after rook to d1, rook to d8. Here, queen to c4 and takes. I can actually play queen takes on c5 due to the pin here. And even if my opponent takes, there's still a pin and an ice skater back rank checkmate. Okay, so now we have rook to a3, queen to e2 now. The rook's no longer pinned, but now this back rank check is threatened if my opponent takes, so there's no way to defend the pawn. Instead, we get rook to b3. I'm trying to go for some cheese maybe over here. Also, he had to protect this b2 pawn. Queen to d3 was the other option, just giving up this pawn and hoping that this nice bishop is enough to draw the game. It probably is with perfect play, but I'm pretty sure that there would be some way to eventually kick this bishop away and get these pawns rolling. But instead we get bishop rook to b3, and now we have to calculate what happens if I take and rook to b8 check because I can't take due to the back rank. However, I do have this move rook to d8 blocking, and now this pawn is just unstoppable. Queen to d6 doesn't really do anything. I would just play d3, and then rook to e8 would threaten this, and then I can also play d2. There's nice lines like, I don't know, somewhere, maybe rook to f1, rook e8, queen takes c6 and d2, and now I am threatening queen takes f1. and followed by a checkmate on e1 with the rook. So instead we get queen to d3 now, but it is too late because now I don't have to trade queens. I can play the queen back to e5, attacking this bishop. And if the bishop moves, then I'll play probably c5, followed by c4 at some point. And these pawns are starting to push. Instead, my opponent started thinking a long time after I played bishop a6, and at this point, I think he had about 14 minutes left, and he eventually played rook to c1, which is a mistake because it allows bishop to h6, threatening to remove the defender. And at this point, I thought the game was over, but it really isn't. But it is really good for me. I thought that after like rook to c2, I could check, take, and then this rook just can't get back, and then I would make a queen. And if the rook goes to c4, staying on this bishop, I can still check, and take, and then there's still no way for the rooks to get back. However, there is king to e1 and king to d1, and now it's actually not so easy at all. So I saw this, and then I saw that after rook to c4, I can actually play rook to e8, and this cuts off the king. So now queen e1 is a huge threat. But instead, my opponent plays rook to d1, hoping that after takes there would be queen to h3. However, there is not queen to h3 because of queen to h5. So kind of a like this, and I'm blocking the bishop and threatening d1. So white doesn't have time to take anything. So my opponent resigns, and I move to 6 out of 6, and that is good enough for first place. And I'm now the back-to-back Idaho state champion. So very cool. Let's look at what my opponent could have done. Maybe rook to f1 would have continued the game a little bit longer, because now after queen captures on c5, there is indeed queen to h3, and this would be a fork because there's no longer any attacking the rook. Instead, what would probably happen is maybe queen to f5 and d3. I still have a very nice passed pawn, so I probably would still win this game. But yeah, my opponent plays rook to my opponent just misses queen to h5, and that's how this game ends. And that is also how this tournament ends. So I'm very happy with this tournament. I got 6 out of 6, and my rating was 2094. It is now 2110. So we're only 90 points away from becoming a national master, and I can finally play in a titled Tuesday. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. And I don't really know what my next content is going to be. Probably something very creative, or something you put in the comments. Please comment video ideas.